Hello, everyone. I'm Pranav Sriraman, and today I'm joined by my co-host Jacob Robinson. Jacob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Today, we're going to talk about a controversial topic that has hit the NFL world, and that is the injury to Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. For those who don't know, during last week, Week 4's Thursday night football game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Miami Dolphins in Cincinnati, Tua Tagovailoa went down and entered the concussion protocol. It was a pretty scary scene. He was hit by contact on the throw, and once he got hit, he was just motionless, lying on the ground. And for those who don't know, in addition to that, 5 days before, in a game against the Buffalo Bills, Tua also had to leave the game, and he was struggling to walk off the field on his own power, which leads some to believe that it was also a concussion related symptom. Jacob, you're a Miami Dolphins fan, so I want to hear what your thoughts are on this entire situation, first of all.
Um, I think after the game against the Bills, it should have been looked at more and gone over more with more precaution. It felt like it was really just kind of overlooked and oh, you're fine. Um, I think that there's definitely more to it. I don't think that hit from the second game would have caused what happened. I think the hit in the Bills game definitely did have an impact on the second hit.
Right. To me, I feel like this is just kind of like an irresponsible move from the Miami Dolphins organization and the NFL in general. Okay, so they came out, they got ahead of it, and they said that Tua returned to the game because they deemed that his injury was a back injury and that he had back spasms. And I'm not necessarily going to say that they're lying. I thought that the decision to not only bring him back into that game was irresponsible, but following that game where they were lucky that he didn't get injured more in a short week, they decided to just bring him back on the field. Talk about the ethics of the entire situation, if you will.
Um, I think it's unethical. I think that you have to put the player before the team. In this situation, that person's health and safety should come before a win. Any day of the week, you shouldn't risk that person getting in severe harm or harm's way, and you should take the right precautions. And I think the medical staff didn't take those precautions. I think that it's just I think there's a better way to handle it, and they didn't handle it the right way.
And I'm in agreement with what you said earlier in terms of the initial hit having a greater impact on the hit that followed that we saw on Thursday Night Football, because repeated blows to the head and repeated brain trauma can cause one to go into that fencing position like we saw Tua Tagovailoa go into, where he was basically lying motionless on the ground. I mean, I was scared that he could have been paralyzed in that situation the way we saw Ryan Shazier all those years ago get paralyzed when he was going for a bad tackle. I mean, are inner so many things go into brain trauma that just affects the entirety of your body. And so putting him back out there felt like was a risk that shouldn't have been taken, because you're the Miami Dolphins. This is your franchise quarterback, or that's what you're hoping that he becomes into. I just don't understand the logic behind risking him for a regular season game and throwing him out there when you have a whole future in front of you, and a whole future in front of you, and you don't even think about just the player. You think about the person under that helmet. Tua Tagovailoa has a family, he has friends, and I just think that the Dolphins were lucky that the situation didn't end up worse than what it was.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, there definitely could have been a worse outcome, and I'm just glad that it wasn't as bad as it could have been, I guess, you know? I mean, that second hit was not as bad as the first, and there was no reason for it to like that wouldn't have caused him to react how he did if it wasn't for the first hit, I don't think. And I think that the protocols for a concussion and everything and like how you examine that need to be looked at. And I think the medical staff for the Miami Dolphins needs to be looked at also after letting him go through that, get back in the first game, and then play the second game.
Right. So this leads me to an overall question, not just Dolphins related, but just in regards to the entire NFL's concussion protocol, because this is not the first time something like this has happened. We've seen numerous times in the past. A notable one was Patrick Mahomes in the NFL divisional playoff game a couple years ago against the Cleveland Browns. He got concussed. He didn't come back into the game, but he returned to action just in a week after wobbling off the field in a similar fashion to Tua Tagovailoa. So that leads me to my entire question. Um, should the league be held more accountable for not prioritizing the safety of their players? And what do you think should change in terms of their concussion protocol? Should it be stricter, or should there be greater safety precautions within the game? What do you think should happen in that sense and the overall situation?
Yeah, I think that they definitely should be held more accountable. I mean, a player's gonna want to play no matter what, you know? They have that mentality that they're playing for their team, they want to win, you know, they want to get back out there and do what they can. So a player is more likely than not most times gonna say, "Hey, put me back in, like I'm good," you know? And I think it's on the NFL, the team, the doctors to kind of like look at them, examine the situation, and say, no, like you are in serious harm's way. And I think that the protocol does need to be a little bit more stricter. I think that putting people in like harm's way, like how it has, is definitely scary. And after that Thursday night game where you saw Tua go into the fencing position, I mean that's just terrible. That's just frightening. And for like the many levels of doctors and staff to just clear him for that game after the first one, I think it's outrageous that that happened, and someone needs to be held accountable, and I think it needs to get looked into, and the protocol needs to kind of be more stricter and have more of a structure to it.
Right. Like I'm not a Dolphins fan, and you could touch on this after I go, but just watching that game as I was on that Thursday night, it's just like an injury where you stop caring about the results on the field, just like you're like you obviously the game is going on, the game continues, but you're not really thinking about the action. Like as soon as Tua got hurt, T. Higgins scored a touchdown up the sideline. But I mean, you can't really react to it the same way you would if things had gone normally, have things gone the way it should have. And the part that stung the most to me when I was watching the game is that I felt that up until game time, this entire situation could have been preventable. And that's what hurts the most about everything is that Tua very well should not have been on the field that day because he was already showing symptoms of not being mentally right prior to the Thursday night football game. You can walk us through your experience as a fan in that situation because it might have hit home a bit more for you.
Yeah, I mean, like I saw it happen, and at first, like I didn't know, you know, like you see that hit go on, you see his hand kind of go into that fencing position, which at first I thought I only saw his finger, you know, and at first I thought like, oh, maybe he like jammed his finger, like I got a bad
Right. Yeah.
angle, and that was my initial thought. And then, you know, they show a different angle. He doesn't hit his hand on anything. He hits his head, and that's what happens. And it's more of like, oh man, like that's not good. Like that's terrible. Like, is he gonna be all right? Like, you know, like what happens from here? You know, I mean, you don't even care about the score. You don't even care about the win or the loss at that point. Like, you're just more worried about like what is going on like with your quarterback. What is going on with this person even, you know? Not even like a player at that point. And I mean like personally for me like I kind of went like to go see if there was anything that came out. Like I went to like Twitter, like I went to like all like ESPN, like multiple different like sports like websites. Like I just kind of went to like different news sources trying to see if they released anything during and after the game. And eventually they said he was gonna fly back with the team, which that's obviously a good sign, He could move everything, so that was very good to hear. But I mean that whole time it's like, man, like is he gonna be all right? Like I couldn't even imagine like I'm just like a fan, like that's my team. Like I have a Tua jersey. But I couldn't even imagine like what those players like you build a bond with somebody, like that's your friend out there. Like I couldn't even imagine what that would feel like.
Right, and I mean, we saw the expression of some of those Miami Dolphins players on the sideline. Jalen Waddle was his teammate for, over 3 years at Alabama, and now he's his teammate in the NFL. He looks shaken up. Tyreek Hill was under the embrace of head coach Mike McDaniel. It's just a hard situation for the players out there to deal with, and obviously for Tua and his family. I mean, you think about the person more than the football player at that point, because I mean, football it only lasts for so long for everyone, and it's a dangerous, violent sport that can take your life away in any second. And I mean, it just a heart wrenching moment, if that's a correct term to put it. But do you have any additional thoughts on this entire situation regarding Tua Tagovailoa and the NFL's concussion protocol?
I mean, I really think they need to look at how they handle it. Look at the like independent doctors that they bring to these games for this reason. Because it was a like an independent doctor that cleared him in the first game, which I still don't understand that. You know what I mean? Like how he got cleared
Mhm.
in the first place. And I think that they just need to structure more of that whole like protocol and like what happens like if a hit like that does happen. Because obviously, like you could tell in that first hit, he wasn't like he wasn't like right. Like he was like messed up from the hit still. Like he couldn't really function right. And I feel like that's a pretty obvious sign of what is going on. But
Right. But I don't have any additional thoughts. So I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys for tuning in. This isn't under the greatest circumstances to talk about. Obviously, we wish Tua Tagovailoa and his family well. This had to be talked about. I mean, with the NFL, just a problem that's gone on for too long. If we didn't address it, it would be wrong. And so that's what we had to do, and that's what we've done. So thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, peace.